This is an ex-Amazon delivery van that I bought 8 months ago.
What is that?
Hey, Amazon bags.
Whoever that is. With the plan of converting it into a camper van. But due to all of the mechanical problems that it had, I didn't have the time or money to fix it. So it's been sat right here, rotting away. I now want to save this old high mileage Ford Transit and see if I can completely transform this van. Or is this going to be an absolute waste of time, and am I just pouring money down the drain? So we are back with the Amazon van, and today is D-Day. Time to put this thing up on some ramps and have a full-on vehicle inspection and do a lot of diagnostics and checks to see why the van isn't running the way that it should be. We think from initial kind of experience from Kieran, the mechanic who's going to be helping me fix this up, that the turbo just needs replacing. But I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more issues than just the turbo. There's also so many other problems to fix on this van because the keys don't work. We've got rust all along the wheel arches. Wow, look at all the water that's just been sat in this van. I'm going to have a lot of rust, I would imagine, to deal with. My biggest concern right now wasn't the rust, but more the fact that driving this van feels more like a death trap than a camper van.
Whoa, stop!
Fuck hell, that wasn't me. That was the van. What the is this thing? That wasn't me. I didn't have my foot there or anything.
Because the engine is what they call a runaway engine, meaning that the engine would start accelerating uncontrollably even when you weren't touching the accelerator, going into high revs and blowing tons of smoke out. This is all caused due to an unintended fuel source in the diesel engine. Essentially, the engine runs faster and faster until it can't handle the stress and it begins to fail. So the first job related to this problem was to replace the turbo, even though the dodgy Romanian dealer I bought this van from listed it saying that he had changed the turbo 1 week before I bought the van.
When I drive the car, the last turbo was like a little bit, and he takes the oil a little bit from the car, you know?
Oh, okay.
And after I change the turbo, I put oil and that's it.
Removing a turbo in itself is quite a challenging job, as you're about to watch, because, well, like most things when it comes to engines and mechanics, I've never done any of this before. In fact, at this stage, I didn't even know what a turbo was or what it looked like. Warning, the following video contains mechanical workmanship done by someone who is not a trained mechanic. In fact, this might as well have been my first week as an apprentice. However, I was under the supervision of 3 very wise and very experienced grease monkeys. So let's get this turbo out. The first step before I could even think about replacing the turbo was to be able to access it because it was right at the back of the engine. So first things first, I needed to remove the airbox filter, firstly by removing this sensor attached to it. I then needed to start to disconnect and pull away the pipes connected to the airbox. And if you're wondering what is a turbo and what does it even do, because like me, I had absolutely no idea, a turbo is a device that increases the power of a vehicle's engine, which is another of the big problems that this van has.
I don't know what is going on. I genuinely feel like I'm losing power.
It uses exhaust gas to compress air, which allows more fuel to be added to the engine. This results in a more powerful combustion and better fuel economy. Thanks, Google. Now, to make sure that you guys don't get scammed on the internet by untrustworthy people like I did, you need to get yourself a Surfshark VPN. A VPN keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies and cyber criminals. Also, a VPN swaps the real-life location of your device to a new one. This way you can travel to virtually any country around the globe. Let's say you're on holiday.
Whoa, nice.
Relaxing by the pool and you want to watch something from your home country, but you're now blocked out.
Damn this country.
We'll log into Surfshark, change your virtual location to your home country so that you don't miss out on any of the home comforts and can enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Yes, come on the boys.
If you use free public Wi-Fi often, then this is an absolute goldmine for hackers. But that's when a VPN helps. It encrypts your online data and keeps you safe on public Wi-Fi. So if you guys would like to check out Surfshark to stay better protected online, then you can go to surfshark.com/Will's whereabouts to get 4 extra months of Surfshark. And there'll be a link down in the video description as well. Now let's get back to replacing this turbo. So the pipes attached to the airbox needed to come off. With that out the way, I could turn my attention to disconnecting the pipe that was connected to the turbo, which, as with all of these pipes, is just held in place by a Jubilee clip. Then I just needed to disconnect this sensor here, and then I was asking for help, because I had no idea how to get this next clip off.
What do you reckon here? I don't know what the this is.
They're two-way pliers.
Oh, there we go. Is that the boost pipe, is it?
No, that's your air pipe for your airbox.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah.
Alright, so don't lose that.
Now we had that pipe out, I just had one smaller pipe to disconnect, which was located in a very awkward, tight space. And with that now loose, it meant I could pull out this pipe here.
I think this is the intercooler pipe, isn't it?
And my first bit of mechanical work on this van was a great success. Thank you, Dave, for your assistance. Next, it was time to get the van lifted up on the ramps, as I was told I needed to do some work underneath. And I can't lie, I was loving life. I felt like a bloody mechanic.
He's mechanicking.
I'm mechanicking! This is so fun. Oh.
Right, you see him?
Oh, yes. Yeah. 2, like 8 mil.
Yeah.
Look at me, 8 mil. Oh, mechanic!
Someone's been doing some research.
I have, yeah. Here we go. So what I've got to undo is those 2 bolts there, which I believe from Dave is some sort of fuel line to the turbo.
So this was my next real challenge, because trying to get access into these bolts was an absolute nightmare. Dave pointed me in the right direction with this extension bar here with a knobbly bit on the end to undo these 2 bolts holding on the fuel line to the turbo.
It's hard to know if I've snapped something or I've just cracked the bolt. Oh, I've cracked the bolt! Beautiful!
I had one more bolt to loosen up and remove, but all of this work of being on your hands and knees, covered in grease and dirt, was really giving me a newfound appreciation for what being a mechanic is actually like.
What I'm realising is the hardest thing is all this, there's so much stuff in the way. to get access to something, it's like a minefield. Oh, I think I've cracked the other one. Or I've snapped something.
Now with the bolts loosened to the fuel feed, I had to very carefully caress them down, trying to make sure not to lose them.
Oh, do I need to keep the bolts?
Yes.
Oh, it's just dropped down here somewhere.
After this, there was one more bolt to unscrew from the top that was attached to the turbo return pipe. Again, don't ask me what a return pipe does, because I have no idea.
Hey, that's out as well. Right, those 2 pipes are out.
The next thing to work on was, you guessed it, unscrewing more bolts. But these 3 connecting the exhaust to the turbo were painfully tight. A bit of WD-40 later, and knowing which tools to use for certain jobs, which I have to say is half the battle with all of this mechanical work.
There we go.
The hardest one's going to be the one down the back.
Oh no, yeah, that's why I was leaving it to last. Let's go for the second easiest next. Right, the last one, which I can't even see. Aha, and the bit's too long, so I need to change the bit. Yeah. There we go, it's come.
There you go.
I'm a mechanic. Oh, that's off. Oh, the exhaust is off, that's good.
Now I thought so far I'd done a pretty damn good job, but with my inexperience of doing work like this, I jumped the gun.
So what I believe from my calculations, the turbo should come out.
Have you done all the turbo bolts, the manifold?
Manifold?
So yeah, can you believe it? There was still more nuts and bolts to undo before this turbo would come out, which to my disbelief didn't seem possible.
How the fuck are you meant to get in there? Right, 1 bolt at the back there. There's another one as well. How the hell are you meant to get there?
I started off taking the bolt out that I could actually see, which was this one at the back here, which thankfully came out nice and easily.
1 out.
The next two, on the other hand, turned out to be a little bit more problematic, and now I was really starting to question my decision of trying to bring this van back to life. If you've got hands the size of a baby, then being a mechanic is probably the perfect job for you. But if you've got normal adult-sized hands like me, then doing this as a job is not something that I can recommend. Trying to remove this second and third nut was way above my pay grade and my skill level, so I had to call Dave back in, who came over with some of his fanciest gadgets.
There it is.
Oh yeah.
You got one there.
Yeah, that. Right. That's the one Well, where was I going? I think that was it.
And there's the other one.
Now I actually had eyes on the nuts, it made it a little bit easier to try and take them out. But only a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's it. Ooh, or has that rounded? I can't tell if it's going or it's just slipping. I think it's slipping. Oh shit. What happens if something like this snapped?
Then you're in trouble.
Because I've snapped bolts before. It feels like it's going to snap.
So that third nut was really making me nervous because I just couldn't tell if I was going to snap it or not, or if I'd already rounded the head off it. So I tried to use a bit of common sense and decided to leave it until I could get more eyes on it. And I decided to try the next nut instead.
There we go. Oh, okay. One has definitely come loose. Or I've snapped it. Who knows right now? Is that it? Is that all I've taken out? A little nut thing.
This final nut to loosen had to be done by the professional mechanic himself, Bo. I couldn't risk snapping it myself, so at least if he snapped it, I had someone to blame. Thankfully though, this is what 15 years of mechanical experience does. It gives you a sixth sense and an understanding of bolts and nuts, and he got it out in no time.
Oh, you've got them two off, so you've got one from underneath now.
Oh really?
The last and final few bolts to undo to completely remove this turbo was to remove the turbo mounting bracket, which meant going back underneath the van again. At this point, it had probably taken me 6 hours just to remove the turbo, and again, it had given me a new appreciation for what it's like to be a mechanic. The amount of awkward positions that you have to put your body and hands into. Some of the most uncomfortable places to try and unbolt something that you can't even see. And don't even get me started on the amount of different tools and equipment that you have to use to get the job done.
Okay. The mount is out.
At this point, I have to say a huge thanks to the guys at C&B Automotive because they allowed me to use their ramp, tools, equipment, and were more than happy to share their knowledge, skills, and years of experience teaching and helping me along the way as I try to do my first ever proper mechanical work. So drop a comment down below to show your appreciation to the guys, and give this video a like because being a mechanic isn't for the faint-hearted, and without these guys' help and support, none of this would have been possible.
Right, the turbo should be loose. He says.
Now everything had been completely removed, all nuts, bolts, pipes and connections. The final thing was to remove this turbo, even though the Romanian bloke who I bought this van from told me that he changed it a week before. This turbo was one of the big issues that was causing a lot of the problems to this van.
One turbo out. All thanks to 3 mechanics. Don't ask me what a turbo does because I don't know.
It makes boost pressure.
It makes boost pressure. There we go.
So here it is, my first ever turbo removed, and one of the big reasons why this van had so many engine problems. You can see here just how much this spindle inside the turbo is moving, which was a clear sign that it was faulty, especially when you compare it to this new one that had no movement at all. When I picked up this van a couple of days ago, after it had been sat for 8 months alone, I was reminded pretty quickly of all of the exterior damage that it had. For me to make this van roadworthy, I needed to get an MOT on it. But for it to even have a chance of passing an MOT, there were 2 important things that needed to be fixed and replaced. The van had a massive crack in the windscreen, as well as someone deciding that they wanted to borrow my driver's side wing mirror, which, let's be honest, I don't think I'll be getting back anytime soon. So whilst we were waiting for our new shiny turbo to arrive, I picked up a new wing mirror from eBay and got this installed to make the van feel a little bit more complete. I then had a guy called James who came over and started to fit me a brand new heated windscreen for this van, which set me back £260. First, he removed the exterior trim underneath the windscreen and then went inside to remove the trim on the A-pillars. Next, it was time to cut out the old cracked windscreen by using this special tool that cuts the glue holding the windscreen in place. And before I knew it, it was out. You can see here just how much moisture and dirt can get underneath your windscreen. So it was time to clean and tidy all of that up by scraping away the old adhesive, and after it was nice and clean, he could start priming the area ready to glue in the new one. And after about an hour's work and £260 later, my cracked, chipped and damaged windscreen had now been replaced for a brand spanking new one, which would have no reason to fail an MOT. After this, it was time to turn my attention back to the problem of the engine running away on itself. I started to unbolt this thing, which I've now learnt is called the intercooler, and this acts as a heat exchanger that cools the air that enters a vehicle's engine. The intercooler was also the reason for a lot of the smoke issues that the van had, because it was completely filled with oil. I want to remind you that I genuinely had no idea about any of this at the time. I really had no idea what each different component of a vehicle does, but I was learning so much from the guys at the garage, and this was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to challenge myself to bring this van back to life. After cleaning the intercooler to get rid of as much oil in the system as we could, it now meant that we could start to refit the new turbo. I won't go through the entire process because it was the same as before, but just in reverse, and to be honest, I found it just as fiddly and awkward.
Oh, you...
Which meant I was crying for help from the professionals every now and then.
Is it in?
Yeah. But after a couple of days' work on the van, we were making some progress, but we weren't done just yet. This was now the first time the van had been started since we'd done a full service on it and replaced the turbo, and it sounded okay. It was still blowing out a ton of smoke, but that's because there would have been so much oil in the system from before, so the van would need to fully clear itself out, which would take a bit of time. Me and Kieran had a good look around the engine to make sure everything was working okay and running correctly, and any bits that we thought would need to be replaced or changed, I did so over the next couple of days.
Oh. One dog bone mount out. Got to put a new one in.
First off, we noticed that the engine had a lot of movement in it, which wasn't a good thing. The dog bone mount that supports the engine from underneath had worn away, so we ordered a new one and I had the simple task of installing it. Another reason the engine had so much movement was because of this engine mount here, which was firstly fixed in place by these 3 bolts. The first one came out no problem.
It's coming, Dave, don't you worry. I've done it.
The second one made me question my life choices.
I hate mechanics.
But eventually came out. And the third one, well, the third one made me realise that I need to start making love to this van instead of fighting against it.
Oh, yes. Oh my God. Being a mechanic, honestly, has to be one of the most fiddly, awkward jobs ever. Just knowing what tools you need all the time. Different extension bars, different socket, different ratchet, different this, different that. Oof.
Believe it or not, this was actually the easy part of removing the engine mount. The hard part was coming up. On this van, there's 2 engine mounts, one on the right side of the engine and one on the left side. These hold the engine in place and are fixed to the chassis of the vehicle to stop the engine swinging while you're driving around. But the one on the left had 2 bolts missing, and it was clear to see that these had been snapped by someone previously, as they'd clearly attempted the same job that I'm about to try.
This is the problem we're having. There's 2 bolts at the back of this engine mount. There were 2 bolts in the front here. However, they weren't actually in place, and we think they've been snapped off. So the only bolts holding this engine mount in are the 2 at the back, and then these 3. But we can't get out the back 2.
For this engine to be fully supported and held in place, we needed to remove these bolts, but they'd completely seized. So Bo had a good crack at it with no luck, and then Dave also had a go, but we weren't getting anywhere.
Oh, no chance.
Really?
These bolts were completely stuck.
They are fucked.
For the moment, we had to leave the engine mount bolts for another day, as now the van had been booked in for an MOT, which meant I needed to work on a few other jobs to make sure that this van would pass with flying colours.
And this is how not to fit wiper blades. When you turn them on, they're not supposed to drop down. They're supposed to go up.
Someone's taken
Take them off, take them back off.
I told you, this was all a learning process, and I was really enjoying it. Although at this point, I hadn't even taken the van for a test drive yet, so I had no idea if all of the time, effort and money that I'd put into it had fixed the mechanical problems that this van had.
You're not completely useless.
My last and final job before we could take this van for a test drive and put it through an MOT was to do something that I've now learned is a common issue with these Ford Transit vans. Rust.
All right, that'll do you. Bit of heck.
Like, you've got to do it. You've got to cut. That's where the good metal starts.
Why? Because it's stronger.
It's stronger there.
He's put a bloody hole in my van.
From here,
Yeah.
up, all across, all of that has got to be all cut out. There you go. Bit
Fucking
more
hell.
there.
Holy shit.
That bit's not too bad. There's quite a bit of... Oh. I lied.
Fucking hell, Dave. This van looked alright about 5 minutes ago. Might as well just cut it all out, yeah.
Where this
From
hole
there.
starts here,
Yeah, all the way across.
there has all got to be cut out and refabricated. Oh shit.
yeah. What do you mean, oh shit? That's alright on that
Yeah,
side.
that's the outer skin.
It's just the inside skin.
Yeah.
But
So-
why does the inside skin get like that and the outside doesn't? Just because, well, it's under the road, I guess.
Yeah.
There's water splashing on it.
Yeah, and it's not been rust prevented properly.
Yeah.
So
But there must be so many vans like this.
all transits are like that, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much from here, right up the back, is going to have to all be cut out and all a new plate, all fabricated and welded in.
I could have just put a bit of hammerite on it.
Yeah, but then all
And
you're
body
doing-
filler.
Yeah, but then all you're doing is masking the fact that when it goes for an MOT,
Yeah.
all MOT testers know transits, so they know where they rust.
Yeah.
And that's the first place they go. So by destroying it now, it means you're only going to make it better. So then when it does go for an MOT, they can see that it's been properly done.
It was going for an MOT tomorrow.
I think you're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 6 stacks of 20s in that bigger hole.
And then a bit of body filler on top.
Yeah, you're lucky that it's not both sides.
Yeah, it's not actually. Yeah, that's fine. Just up there on the left seal, up on the right, and then this back right here.
Yeah.
You've seen worse than that.
Yep. I've seen a hell of a lot worse than that.
Well, that's why I'm asking you, what are your welding skills like? We'll call it 10 hours and we'll call it a tenner an hour.
So there we have it. All thanks to Dave, we now have a massive hole in the underside of the van. But to be honest, he was totally right, because this is exactly what an MOT tester would have looked for. And this would have been a guaranteed fail, so it was better to sort this out now rather than later. To me, body repair, fabrication and welding was something that, again, I'd never ever done before, but it was something that I'd always wanted to try. So I guess you could say that if you want to learn new skills, do things you've not done before, then buy yourself a Ford Transit, because there's bound to be plenty of problems that need fixing. So after I'd cut a lot of the really bad rusty metal out, I gave it all a good clean with this wire wheel. And if you're wondering, Christ, Will, shouldn't you just replace the whole side of this van? Well, at this point, I was just trying to get the van through an MOT, so I didn't want to create more work for myself. Once I've got the van back to my workshop, I'm going to be fixing all of this rust properly, but that's going to be for a separate video.
That worked all right. Just got to cut one more piece here.
and then another piece there. So Kieran gave me a quick DIY lesson in welding, which I have to say I was very, very excited to try, as this was always a skill that I'd wanted to learn. I'm not going to go into huge detail about the welding process, as I'd literally had a 10-minute lesson, and again, we're just trying to make this van sufficient enough to be roadworthy. So we started to weld in these new pieces of metal that I'd cut out.
Here is my first ever piece of welding. I'm not going to touch it just yet. Doesn't look pretty, but as long as it's strong, that's the main thing.
And after a few hours of some very novice welding, the holes were patched over and seam sealed, and now the van was finally ready to come out of the garage and to be road tested.
Smells like oil now.
Try one at a time, mate.
Yeah.
So the issue that we're having, because I haven't explained any of this, is that as soon as we go into third gear, fourth, fifth and sixth, no power whatsoever. So it's going to be a long old diagnosis to try and figure out what exactly is going on. So this issue of having a complete lack of power has been a problem that the van has had ever since I bought it. However, this issue seemed to have gotten worse, because now we literally had zero power or boost in third gear onwards. Oh God. So the van is having all of the same issues that it had prior to fitting a new turbo. And I think probably 90% of people thought it was the turbo, as did we, which we've replaced, which is no big deal because it's nice to have a new turbo, but we still have no power for whatever reason. As soon as you go into third gear, nothing. So the next hour or so of test driving the van with Kieran was trying to brainstorm as much as we could to try and work out what was causing this issue. And as Kieran started to unplug different sensors in the engine, we started to make some progress. We got power in third gear, fourth gear. Kieran's just disconnected the MAP sensor. The traction control light is on. Now we've disconnected the MAP sensor.
Full power again.
But now we have full power. So are you telling me all of this could be bloody one sensor? This is the first time that I can remember that this van has actually had power, and it's all to do with a sensor, which is this sensor right here on the airbox, which apparently is the MAF sensor. What we just did on that drive was disconnect the fuel temperature sensor, which is there, but that didn't do anything, and then Kieran disconnected this, and we now have power in third, fourth, fifth and sixth. So we're going to swap out this sensor. That should then remove the light on the dashboard, and then we'll be able to tell if by swapping out the sensor for a new one, or just a second-hand one at the minute, if that has fixed it. If this all sounds very confusing to you, then don't worry, you're not the only one, because I too had no bloody idea what was going on. But bear with me, because I'll try my best to explain this in just a minute. Second gear. No. Ooh. Okay, so we swapped out the MAF sensor for another one on a Ford Transit, and we got no power again.
So let's try now then, like disconnecting the one onto the intercooler, because that's another intake. Air temperature sensor.
Just when you think you've got it, you haven't. Gonna disconnect the intercooler sensor now, I think. Lots going on, hard to explain because I don't understand it. So we now have power again after we've disconnected the MAP sensor. So over the next few hours, we test drove the van again and again and again, trying to diagnose exactly what was causing this power issue. So the van is back at the workshop, which means I've got good news and I've also got some bad news. The good news is we've got a new windscreen, we've got a new wing mirror, And we've got a brand spanking new turbo, which has fixed the big issue of this vehicle running away on itself. The van no longer accelerates and feels like you're just going to drive into a ditch or it's just going to blow up. And the biggest plus of them all is that we now have a pass on an MOT, and this van is registered as 208,875,000 miles on the clock. I'm not going to say that it flew through an MOT because it didn't, because it actually failed the first time we took it because we missed a little patch of welding that needed to be done. The not so good news is that unfortunately I still have no power in 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th gear, which is a real problem. And that problem that we've now kind of narrowed it down to is because of two things. This issue isn't actually showing on the diagnostics reader when you scan the van, which makes it even more problematic to try and find what the hell is causing the power issue. However, what we did work out was that when Kieran unplugged the MAF sensor, this one here, the mass airflow sensor, the van then had full power and was driving amazingly well. Without doubt, the best this van has ever driven. As soon as you'd plug it back in, you'd lose power again. So then what we did was we unplugged the MAP sensor, which stands for mass airflow pressure sensor, I believe. And then when we unplugged that sensor, we then had power again. But as soon as you plug these sensors back in, you then have no power. So it was very, very confusing. We did change and replace both sensors for brand new ones, but that didn't seem to make a difference at all. So there is now something going on with this van, which we're 99.9% sure is some sort of electrical issue. And as soon as you hear that, my heart sinks, because that could be absolutely anywhere in this engine, and it could be as obvious or as little as a fuse, a relay, some dodgy wiring, maybe some corrosion on the wires, whatever it is. We did not have the time to go into all of the wiring looms and really delve into the electrics of this van. So over the next couple of days, that's my task. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe, because trust me, I pray to the van and Ford Transit gods that in the next video, this van will be driving. And if it isn't, I'm gonna have to scrap it. A big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. As always, guys, catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. I swear mechanics is like the most problem-solving diagnostic job I've ever tried.